Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a brand new video. As you can see, baby boy has arrived safe and sound. He is, as of today, 11 days old. So I would like to introduce you to Killian Joshua, a beautiful little boy. He was born on the 2nd of September, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces, and he is just the most precious, well-behaved, chill little boy, aren't you? He does have some awake windows now, which is really lovely. But anyway, in today's video I thought I would sit down and share my birth story. I did end up having an elective C-section with Killian. I've talked about it within my vlogs before. We just decided that it was going to be the best option for me, for our family, and honestly I don't really have any regrets at this point. So I'll take you back to the day before my C-section. I was given some omeprazole to take the night before, and also some special kind of body wash to shower with, so I did that. And then the next morning I set my alarm for 5:45 because I had another dose of omeprazole to take at 6 o'clock. And then also I was allowed to have something to eat up until 7. I was told I was allowed to have just a normal sized breakfast. So I opted to have a couple of slices of toast, but I did load them up with peanut butter and jam because I knew that that would keep me full. And I had a cup of tea, and then I had to have another shower in that weird body wash that they gave me. They did give me 2 pre-op drinks, which were they were a lemon flavour, but I really didn't like them, so I did manage to drink one, but not the other one. The nurse at my pre-op appointment did tell me that, you know, if I couldn't drink them, that was fine. It wasn't gonna, you know, stop anything from going ahead, but it would help in terms of the way I may feel, because you know, my electrolytes might be low after the C-section, but luckily it wasn't actually that much of a prolonged period where I couldn't eat. We needed to get to the hospital at 11:30, so my mum came over to have all of the kids for me. We obviously had all of Avery's medications and everything ready for her, so that you know, it'd be easy for my mum to care for her. That was the main reason for the C-section, was making sure Avery's care was kind of set up, making sure all of her meds were ready, everything that she was going to need were ready while we would be gone. If I was to go into spontaneous labour, there was, you know, no guarantee that things would be ready. My mum doesn't know how to draw up her medications. The only person that would have been able to do anything like that would have been my sister-in-law, but she was actually on her honeymoon for the 2 weeks kind of surrounding my due date. So we went to the hospital. We arrived for 11:30 and we were shown to a private room. Luckily I had been in contact with a couple of different people regarding kind of my stay in hospital and birth preferences, and just going over the things that happened with Avery and what I would like to happen with this little one. And she did request that I had my own room, which was really nice, because I did stay in for a prolonged period. So we were shown to our room, and when the nurse came back, she actually told me that I was likely to be first on the list, which really shocked me. I had mentally prepared myself to be last on the list because, you know, I wasn't high priority. There was no medical reason why I was having a C-section aside from what happened to Avery. I just assumed that priority wise I would be last on the list, but no, I was first. And she told me that they like to get things going by about 1:30, so at that point then she gave me my gown and my compression socks, so I changed into those, and I actually sat and started editing a video while I waited. So the time did fly. Within the time we were waiting, we saw a doctor, and we also saw the anaesthetist. I don't know if I've said that right. but just going over all of the risks and the procedure and bits and bobs like that. And I think it was about 1:45 that the nurse came in and said that they were ready for me, which I started getting the jitters at that point. I was very nervous, but we were taken downstairs to, I guess, kind of like where all the theatres were. And once again, the doctor went through all of the risks with me, made sure that, you know, I was, you know, consenting to the surgery, just all of the legalities they have to go through. While I was doing that, the nurse was helping Josh get suited and booted, so he had to kind of wear almost like a gown over his clothes, and then some covers for his shoes, and also a cap over his head. And then they took us into the room. The room was a little bit chilly, but it wasn't, you know, wasn't bad. I was obviously just in the gowns. So the first thing they did was put the cannula in my hand, and I'd probably say out of all of it, that was the most painful. So they put the cannula in my hand, and then my spinal was administered. They did give me like a local anaesthetic first, just so I didn't really feel the spinal going in. So all I really felt was a little scratch, and my legs started to go really warm, and my legs had already started to go heavy when they laid me down, which was a very strange sensation. The doctor checked a few times how, you know, what I could feel, and he did that by spraying cool spray. So he'd start kind of at the bottom of my belly and spray all the way up to my ribs. And a few times I could still feel the cold up on my ribs here. So they basically just waited and kept checking, and they wouldn't start, or they didn't start. Bless you, bless you. They didn't start until I could no longer feel that cold spray. So then they popped the screen up. And honestly, I was just kind of chatting to the nurse and to Josh, and I didn't think they'd started. And then I started to feel a lot of kind of like pushing on my belly, and, you know, a lot of jiggling about. And I knew that I would experience that during the surgery because they told me that, but I didn't think they'd started. So I said, like, what is it that they're doing? And someone said that, you know, they're just trying to get baby out. And at that point I was like, well, have they started then? And the doctor then said, yep, they started about 3 minutes ago. Or the anaesthetist, I can't remember who it was that actually replied to me. So yeah, literally within 30 seconds of that happening, we heard him cry. So he was born, and they asked me if I wanted to see him. Of course, I said yes. So they literally just kind of lifted him up over the sort of fabric screen that they put up. I didn't really get a good view of him at that point. I just got a really good view of his bottom because of the way he was being held up. And I'd probably say this was the part that kind of I wish had have been a bit different, but I don't know how it could have been different. Was that he was then kind of like, you know, passed over to the midwives to be weighed and to kind of have a nappy put on, a hat put on, be dried off and checked over. Obviously being checked over was really, really important to us. And I couldn't see him at this point. I could hear him, and Josh was able to kind of go to him and keep an eye on him, but I couldn't see him. And that was, it felt like a really long time. Even though it was just a couple of minutes, it felt like a really long time because I was just waiting to get my hands on my baby. So once they had done all that, they asked if I wanted him on my chest, and once again, obvious yes. So they brought him over to me then, and they tucked him kind of into my gown so we could have skin to skin. And the relief I felt when he got put on my chest and I could actually see him and he was fine. The weight, there was a little bit of a mess up with his weight. So we know he was 3'2" something. In the UK they measure the weight in grams for babies. He was 3'2" something because the nurse said it. and I remember them converting it into pounds and ounces, and they said it was £7 2 ounces, and I remember that really clearly because that was exactly the same as Zach's weight. Zach was born at £7 2 ounces, which made Killian and Zach my two heaviest babies. So that does kind of equate to around 3.2 something in grams. However, when they moved me back to the ward, they actually wrote down 3,420 grams, which works out about £7.8. And when they came to weigh him at 3 days old, he was weighing £6 9 ounces, which meant that he lost 13% of his birth weight, which would have been a concern. But luckily, thank goodness for live photos, we did hear the nurse in one of our live photos say 3.2, because we were absolutely convinced that he was not 3,420. So they agreed that it was more likely that he was 3,240, which is about £7 2 ounces, and it was just written down wrong. Because the nurse only said 3.2, and that's all we were able to catch in the live photo, they could not put his accurate birth weight down. No one could remember his accurate birth weight, even though the likelihood was it was 3,240, but they couldn't write it down. So his birth weight on like paper now is 3,200, so 3.2 kilograms. Which is a bit frustrating because, you know, that's not his accurate birth weight, but it is what it is. It meant that we could be discharged, and, you know, he hadn't lost 13% of his birth weight, which I knew wasn't the case. He was feeding really, really well. He was giving us lots of pooey nappies, so I knew he was fine. Anyway, going back to his arrival, after he was placed on my chest, the doctors basically spent a load of time kind of stitching me back up and yeah, doing what they needed to do. At that point though, I was kind of oblivious to the rest of the room. I just got sucked into the baby bubble, and it was just me, Josh, and the baby, and we were just talking about him and what he looked like and who we thought he looked like and his hair colour, and yeah, just caught up in a little bubble, which was really, really nice. When they eventually finished everything, they needed to kind of move me over to a different bed. So at that point then, Josh got his first cuddle, and they moved me over. What I will say was the strangest sensation, not being able to feel my legs. I remember looking down when they were moving me, and they had my leg bent up, and I still felt as though my legs were still laying flat because I couldn't feel them at all. It was a very strange sensation. But once they had moved me to the bed that they were going to take me to recovery in, to post-op, they handed Killian back to me, and then they wheeled me into post-op, and that's where we stayed for a few hours then. It did take a few hours for any feeling to come back in my legs. I only needed to be able to move them ever so slightly for them to be happy to send me back to the ward. Within that time, there was a few things that happened. My obs were checked very, very regularly. They slowly sat me up, so literally every sort of 10 minutes or so they would sit me up a tiny little bit more because my blood pressure was on the low side. So they just wanted to make sure my blood pressure wasn't going to drop if they sat me up too quickly. Killian had his first feed, which he was an absolute pro at right from the start. We phoned our parents, and we let some of our family know that he was born. Bless you. And we just sat and talked and kind of took it in turns to cuddle Killian. I was given a couple of cups of water, and then once I was, you know, it was seen that I could keep those down and it wasn't making me feel queasy or anything, I was offered a cup of tea and a sandwich. I didn't feel like eating. I did end up eating half a sandwich just to kind of keep my energy up, and I felt fine, and we did have a cup of tea, which once again I felt fine. I didn't actually feel nauseous at all, which was really good. But once I was able to kind of wiggle my legs a little bit, it was my thighs that I first got the movement back in. They wheeled me round to the room that we'd started in, so I was back in the room on the ward, and then we were just left on our own for a little while then, just the three of us, which was really, really nice. So he was born at 2:30 exactly. I think my surgery started at 2:25. It wasn't until 8:30 that evening that I was allowed to kind of get up and out of bed. I did request to get out of bed at 8:30 because Josh needed to get back for Avery, and I just wanted to make sure that he was still there to help me get in the shower before he went home, because that was something I didn't really want a midwife helping me with. I know that, you know, everyone had already seen my bottom half naked, but I kind of wanted to keep a little bit of dignity beyond that point. So they did help me get up out of bed at 8:30 and walked to the bathroom. Luckily, like I said, I was in my own room, so I did have my own bathroom, so it wasn't much of a walk. But Josh helped me get showered. I was still quite kind of numb in my incision area. The medication was all still working by that point, so I didn't feel overly sore. I definitely felt very strange. But it felt really nice to get showered and in my own clothes. I did have to put the compression socks back on though. But yeah, Josh went home at that point then, and it was just me and Killian for the night. But I was very fortunate in that I could get out of bed independently from 8:30, and I could lift Killian out of his crib independently as well. And those were the two things to me that were, you know, I would have been worried about if Josh wasn't there, but I feel as though I was able to be quite independent really early on. But that was how little Killian came into the world. I will go into more depth on my C-section recovery in another video. Like I said, it's been really positive, so I feel as though it will be a good resource to have a video like that on my channel for any mums that are going for a C-section that haven't had one before, and what to expect, and just hear kind of a positive story, because there's a lot of, you know, horror stories out there when it comes to C-sections. It's more so when it's an emergency as opposed to an elective C-section. But my recovery has been very, very positive. You know, obviously there's pain, but I don't have any regrets. I feel as though it's gone really well. I think the only point I felt as though, you know, oh, have I made the right decision here, was as I was waiting for them to administer the spinal anesthetic. I got a little bit scared then, a little bit jittery, because it all felt quite clinical. It was a little bit scary, but once I was kind of laying back and they were doing the surgery, I relaxed, I calmed down, and as soon as he was born, it was all forgotten. So yeah, I have no regrets. He is healthy. We did spend 3 days in the hospital, 3 nights, because I wanted to pass the night that Avery had her cardiac arrest. Not just for, you know, just being a little bit paranoid, but also for, you know, my mental health. So I did stay in for 3 nights, but within that time some extra checks were done on Killian, which I was really grateful for. So instead of the midwife doing his NIPE check, which is basically like his physical, the paediatricians did that, so we knew that it was kind of a thorough check. We also had a few other paediatricians check him out, and then he also had an ECG as well, which was checked over by a consultant. So we know that there's no abnormalities in his kind of ECG trace, but they are going to be recommending that the GP make a referral for him to a cardiologist, a little bit like what we've done with Avery and Zach. Just to keep an eye on his heart more than anything, not to suggest something's wrong, but because of the family history, with Zach having, you know, a cardiac abnormality, and then with what happened with Avery, they just think it'd be good to kind of keep an eye on his heart, which again, I'm really grateful for. So I do think the care we received was really, really good. I think I was listened to, which I appreciate. And they made me feel comfortable, they made me feel heard, and they didn't make me feel as though I was overreacting. So I think, yeah, it was all really, really positive. We were discharged on the Friday. He was born on the Tuesday. The kids absolutely love him. Avery, I still think, is a little bit unaware of, you know, the change in circumstances. When we kind of show him to her, she does smile. But I'm just looking forward to when we can actually lay them down together and they can interact a little bit more. At the moment, Avery is poorly, so we've been unable to do that as often as we would have liked. Killian also sounds a little bit snotty at the moment too, so we are keeping a very, very, very close eye on him. He is wearing 2 sleep monitors at night, which might seem a little bit paranoid, but we're just not taking any chances with this little one. But the boys absolutely adore him. They just want to cuddle him all the time. And like I said, he is a very good baby. He is very chilled out. He is a hungry boy. He likes his food, but I've been very fortunate in that he is a really good feeder. I have not had to worry on how much food he is having because he wants to eat often. And he is very good at it. He's got a good latch, which is good, isn't it, baby boy? But unsure on eye colour just yet. My guess would be brown. Hair colour is, I would say, red. In some lights it looks brown, it looks dark like Avery's, but it's definitely more red than Avery's was. So I think maybe a dark auburn. And we always said the likelihood was he was either going to be dark like Avery or he was going to be a redhead. And it's gone more red this time, but he is absolutely beautiful. We are all very much in love with him and he is just the most perfect addition to our family. So yeah, that was my birth story, my positive planned C-section. I hope you enjoyed listening and meeting this little guy, and I will catch you guys again very soon in another video. Bye guys.